Motorcycle accidents are terrifying experiences. You're hurt, and you need someone on your side who understands. Call the Advocates. They have over 20 years experience with accident cases and have recovered settlements for hundreds of other motorcyclists. They can handle the medical bills and deal with the insurance company so you can focus on recovering and getting back on your bike. The Advocates are my motorcycle attorneys.
You deserve clear, risk-free advice to help get you back on your feet. You deserve an advocate.
This is The Monty Show, the truth in sports talk streaming. When you want unbiased opinions about your favorite team without the spin, all you have to do is find The Monty Show, streaming live and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on YouTube. And now, here's Monty.
Hey, The Monty Show, live on your YouTube machine. SEC Media Days kicking off today in Atlanta, Abbott, Dallas, Texas. You know, the home of the Big 12. Dallas, Texas is where SEC Media Days will be. Yeah, we'll talk about that. A lot to get to with Zach LaVine, NBA trades. Obviously, there were some events over the weekend that we may need to discuss at length. What a crazy weekend in sports. Dígame, Spain, congratulations. What a week, what a month, what a year for Spain. So much to get to. It's all brought to you by The Advocates. TheAdvocates.com, the best injury attorneys in the business. I tell you every day on the show, you can talk to an injury attorney 100% for free. No cost. Chat with an injury attorney right now. Did you get hurt at work over the weekend? Did you get in a motorcycle accident, a boating accident? Listen, it wasn't your fault you got in that accident. You didn't deserve to get into an accident, but you do deserve an advocate at theadvocates.com. Again, legit, 24/7, 365. Get online at theadvocates.com. You could chat with an injury attorney, and it won't cost you a dime. And the best part about working with the advocates is that you never pay out of pocket because you don't pay the advocates unless and until they win your case. SEC Media Days, we'll talk all about that coming up in about half an hour. But I do want to start with this Florida State and Clemson story joining the Big 12. And, you know, the people tweeting over the weekend that this is happening within a year. Exactly how is this happening? And I think, you know, if you've watched this show for any amount of time, we've worked very hard to be accurate. Whether we are first or last, we've worked very hard to be accurate on this show about college football expansion, NBA trade talks, the things we talk about on this show. We talk about from a position of sourcing and information. And I can tell you, talking to sources around the Big 12, talking to sources in the TV industry who probably have the most to do with this, even more than those in college football. Nobody believes that there is an agreement in place. Nobody believes that there is a clear path for Florida State and Clemson to join the Big 12 a year from now, 5 years from now. And again, before we get into the details of this, I just want to ask you, why are you so easily baited on this stuff? I've never understood it. Over 100 people on Twitter sent me Jason Shear's embarrassing tweet about how, you know, this is done, or it's not done. Nobody in the Big 12, not a single person in the Big 12 is telling anyone that Florida State and Clemson are joining the Big 12, not now, let alone a year from now. That's just not the case. That's not happening. There is no mechanism, and that is the wording that was used directly to me by not one but two people, TV and football sources, telling me many weeks ago, there is no mechanism for Florida State and Clemson to leave the ACC. They have let it be known that they are not going to buy their way out of the conference. And if you're not going to buy your way out of the conference, you will need to do one of two things. Find 10 fellow members to break the grant of rights to essentially melt the ACC down so that you can then go and join another conference. They've not been able to do that. And trust me when I tell you, Florida State and Clemson have tried to find 10 total members to break the grant of rights. They failed repeatedly. They are now also in court, as you are well aware. And I think people, and this is my opinion, I think people read far too much into the court's decision to give Florida State an unredacted copy of the ESPN broadcast agreement between the ACC and ESPN. A judge ruled last week that Florida State shall be given an unredacted copy of that contract. And I think people thought this was checkmate. I think people believe that there is some smoking gun in this contract. Do you think that the ACC and ESPN did not know that this was eventually going to be the outcome? Because there is no legal precedent to prevent Florida State from getting an unredacted copy of the contract that currently impacts them financially. There's no legal mechanism. There are contractual obligations that this judge agreed means that Florida State gets an unredacted copy of this contract. Now, also go back and read the limitations that are on Florida State. They had to agree to a confidentiality agreement, and they are not allowed to share that document with anybody else. So it's not like the judge said, well, you can just put this out on the interwebs. This was the eventual outcome. But this does not mean that Florida State won anything. This does not mean that there was a ruling in favor of Florida State. All this means is Florida State, and by extension Clemson, are moving through the process of litigation. They've won nothing. So again, I will tell you, there is no mechanism for Florida State and Clemson to leave the ACC. They are bound by two deals. They are bound by the grant of rights, and they are bound by the ACC charter. They have no way to get out of that, and no judge has given them that. So I think this is a lot of hyperbole. The idea, and try this on for size, the idea that the reporting is Florida State and Clemson are leaving the ACC to join the Big 12 within a year. He said within a year. Do you understand the splatter that is, the guesswork that is? And I'm not trying to be an asshole about this, but I just continue to ask you, why do you do this? Why do you put yourself in this position? Why do you believe when there is no legal precedent, there is no path? Right now, ask yourself this. How legally, how contractually, what does it look like for Florida State and Clemson to make a decision? And not even just the guy tweeting that within a year they're going to join the Big 12. Ask yourself this. What about all the people saying that they're going to announce at ACC Media Days that they are leaving the conference after 2024-25? A year from now, they're leaving the conference. So I ask you, how would that even be possible? How would it be possible? ACC Media Days coming up within a week. How would it be possible for Florida State and Clemson to announce their exit from the conference? And again, I ask one more time, why is everybody comparing Oklahoma and Texas to Florida State and Clemson? It tells you that people don't know what they're talking about. They're two completely different situations. And I think all this is, Jake, is grasping at straws.
100%. And I also think you got to consider the fact that we're in the slow time of sports season. So guys need stuff to write about. Guys need stuff to talk about. Guys need stuff to, create quote unquote content with. And I think that again, your best point, in my opinion, is where does this artificial timeline of, hey, they're leaving the conference inside of a year, within a year, or a year from now even come from? And I think that's the thing that you as a sports fan have to kind of look for in reporting. Like if somebody says, hell yeah, we know, like we've been told by staffers or by people in the know that they're leaving in a year. Well, if they could leave in a year, why wouldn't they just leave now? Or why wouldn't they have left? Like, it doesn't add up. And I think that we get so caught up in the meltdown of these conferences. Like if you go back and think about just how much vitriol and how much celebration I feel like there was when the Pac-12 kind of melted down, like people were all about it. And I think about the passion that the Oregon State fans had for their situation, how pissed they were. Like this is right up that same alley. Like we're sitting here looking at a situation where you've got two of the best teams in the ACC on the football field, not happy with their situation, but also having signed the grant of rights twice, trying to now get out of that contract. And there's just no way to do that. We've seen this time and time again. This is not the first time we've been on the, hey, we want to leave our conference train. This is not the first time that this conversation has been had in the history of college football. So I don't know why people gravitate so hard to one tweet or one guy who is rarely right about anything saying that this conference is going to, I guess burn down in a year. Because by saying Clemson and Florida State are leaving in a year, you're saying the ACC is pretty much done. Because if Clemson and Florida State leave, everybody else is going to leave too.
And I think this is why I don't read DMs. I don't reply. I don't interact on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest with you, because it just leads to ridiculousness. The hundreds of people who sent me all of these tweets. Jason Scheer's tweet talking about how, and I think the exact verbiage in his tweet was something to the effect of people in the Big 12 are saying or believe or that Clemson and Florida State will join the Big 12 within a year. And listen, believe it or not, I really don't care what I think you guys know that by now. I really don't care what people think. We talk to as many people in the Big 12 as anybody in this business. I think we demonstrated our connections during Big 12 expansion, and Jason has as well. I don't have a bone to pick with Jason Scheer. I'm not trying to pick on him specifically. I look at all of the reporting. There's not a person in the Big 12 that I can find who believes Clemson and Florida State will ever be a member of the conference. I can't, and that includes Arizona. We are brilliantly, strongly connected in Arizona and Arizona State communities. Like at the top of the table, we are connected. None of them believe that Clemson and Florida State will ever be members of the league. I can't find a single fucking person in this league who was like, oh yeah, it's happening within a year. Not one, not a single one. And I furthermore can't find anybody in TV at any network, at any ad agency, anywhere who believes that Florida State and Clemson are going to ever be members of the Big 12. There simply is, as people have said repeatedly, and I'm assuming it's written in a document somewhere, but there is no mechanism for Florida State and the ACC or Florida State and Clemson to leave the ACC and join the Big 12. It's right now not even possible.
Yeah.
And then you have to ask yourself, if you go by extension, what is the logic if you are Florida State and Clemson to leave the ACC and join the Big 12? What are you going to make more money? Not currently. Now, I believe that every year going forward, the Big 12 will distribute more and more money. They're simply too aggressive in the commercial markets, and they are too aggressive in relationship building not to earn and make and distribute more money. There's no question about that. But this completely writes off the Super League premise.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're Florida State and Clemson, logically think through this. If a year from now we're leaving the conference, which is what a ton of people have reported, that I want to be careful. I'm not trying to, be grandiose over the top. Several people have reported that at ACC Media Day, they are going to announce a year from now they're leaving the conference. And I just ask you, how would they make that announcement now? Number one. But number two, if it is a year from now and they're going to join the Big 12 a year from now, the question I ask is, Why would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't. Nobody in their right mind would. Yeah.
Because you're going to have options, right? And I'm telling you, this shit is completely, it's garbo. It's not happening. I frankly hope it does, because I would love to see this unfold.
Because it's garbage.
But explain to me why a year from now you would join the Big 12. Because certainly Florida State, Clemson to a lesser extent, Florida State can write its own ticket in football. And I would also remind you, they're a pretty prolific basketball program, and they're awfully good at stick and ball sports. They can write their own ticket. Why would they choose the Big 12? They can go to the SEC. They absolutely can. Florida, the Gators will pitch a fit, bitch and moan. They're about making money in the SEC, which I wish everybody else was about, because these conversations would be much clearer. But Florida State can go wherever it wants, and they want the SEC, from what I am told.
And I love the premise and all the reporting of this story that people think that they would only go to the Big 12 because they're so desperate to leave their conference. Like, oh, well, they're so desperate to get out that they're going to jump to the Big 12, ignoring the fact that it's not even possible for them to leave the conference, number one. But number two, the idea that in addition to that reporting, you would say they would go to the Big 12 as a full share member right out of the gate is incredible to me, dude. It's incredible to me that you think that, number one, it's just assumed that the Big 12 would just hat in hand, bend the knee to Clemson and Florida State, and would just love to have them, and whatever those two want, the Big 12 is going to shell out because somehow the Big 12 is like a lesser conference. I agree the Big 12 is not making the money that, the Big 10 and the SEC are making. We all agree on that. It's pretty clear. But the Big 12 is its own conference. They do their own thing. They've got a very clear vision for where they want to go. So when I was looking at all this reporting, this is what stood out to me, that you're not only saying they're going to leave in this artificial year timeline, you're saying they're going to the Big 12 as a full share member day one, which we just haven't seen.
And again, all of this believes that a grant of rights you've tried to get out of, and let's be conservative, I think they've been trying to break that grant of rights in earnest with all of their effort for 3 years now. Not been able to do it. They signed it not once, but twice, and have not been able to prove duress. So they've given up. Florida State and Clemson have given up on we were out of our goddamn mind when we signed the second extension. 2, the ACC has damaged us, fiduciary responsibility, Stanford, SMU, we should have been in the college football playoff. That's quite literally and figuratively their argument. And that the grant of rights in the contract, because remember, again, and I just continue to tell you this, if you want to smoke out the guys who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, it's the guys who don't understand the grant of right and the TV deal are two totally different contracts.
Right.
The grant of rights again is between the universities and the conference. That's it. The TV contract is between the conference and the TV network. They're two totally different beings, two totally different documents. And yet people can't get their heads around that. If you didn't learn that in the Pac-12 meltdown, I don't know when you'll ever learn that, because that was the living example of how grant of rights and TV contracts are separate.
Well, and I think this grants of rights situation also has a big impact on the Big 10 and the SEC. Like if you're a school in one of those two conferences and you're looking, obviously A, at the Pac-12 situation over the summer, but then B, this ACC situation, I would think that's why guys like Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are so incentivized to create a new model that works to appease their members, right? Because the thing is, these two are businessmen. This would include Brett Yormark, right? These three guys are businessmen trying to run not only a profitable business, but a healthy business. And it's not good business anymore to be committing, to this sort of structure with the grant of rights and a TV contract and bringing it together.
It's interesting you bring that up, because another point that was made to me by a source in the Big 12 was, if you're Florida State and Clemson, is it smart business for you to be making an arrangement with the Big 12 today to be saying, oh yeah, handshake, we'll join your conference as soon as we're done with this? That's a terrible business decision. Like, you're not doing that. Now, these are also people who have made terrible business decisions, signing the extension of their grant of rights. Right? But it's terrible business when you're in the middle of litigation that doesn't have a clear ending, when your conference is divided, that you would go and make an agreement with the lowest revenue generating league available to you. When by other reports, the Big Ten and the SEC are interested in Florida State and Clemson. And all of this to say, did anybody ask North Carolina and Duke what their opinion is? Because they're the ones that are going to ultimately make this or break this.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're trying to report that a year from now, Florida and Clemson or Florida State and Clemson are leaving the ACC, you're saying the conference is going to burn down in a year. Like,
right.
If those two leave, this conference is in meltdown mode, like, instantly. Like, again, UNC and Duke are out for sure. At that point, then obviously you're going to take a good hard look at what Notre Dame is going to decide to do.
Who are the other six? Like, this is where I truly believe people sit around and they're like, well, the Virginia schools in Louisville, and you don't have 10 members of the ACC willing to say today, I'm out. You don't have that. And again, the ACC lives and dies on Tobacco Road. We can huff and puff with Florida State. Multiple people have told me Clemson just carries no weight. Clemson carries no weight. There is, I believe the things that I hear about Clemson when I am told by important, substantive people that Clemson's brand is significantly damaged by Dabo Swinney.
And I don't know why anybody would respect Dabo Swinney. I mean, it's the Alabama situation, right? Like, Dabo was the first guy in his khakis and his orange sweater knocking on Alabama's door, trying to be the successor to Nick Saban, and Alabama didn't want anything to do with that. And it's very clear, and I think it does impact other conversations. If you're not going to be an proactive personality in your conference when it comes to, you know, the way the game is being played now with NIL and portal and the new age of money and everything that's going on, and Dabo hasn't been that guy, Clemson's not going to walk into a college football playoff meeting, an ACC conference meeting, and all of a sudden be everyone's All-American. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Florida State, you understand their value. They're a college football playoff team. Like, you get it, right? Stick and ball sports, you get it. But with Clemson, I'm not sure that Dabo is regarded as some amazing guy.
Maybe the word of the day is damaged goods.
Yeah, right?
Who is Clemson? Zach LaVine?
Yeah.
Clemson is damaged goods right now. All of that to say, just slow your roll. You have to let this litigation play out. Do you understand the amount of money that Florida State has spent on this litigation? The man hours at the state employee level. Do you understand the number of man hours that have been spent by Florida State at the state employee level? It's astronomical. They're tens of millions of dollars in fees, man hours, salaries. They're tens of millions of dollars into this ACC lawsuit.
So you're complaining you're not making enough money, but then on the other hand, you're happy to just burn a hole paying for litigation.
It's remarkable the amount of assets and resources Florida State has deployed into this lawsuit to then put the cart before the horse and announce you're leaving the conference at ACC Media Day.
And I also might add, just logically speaking, if you're Florida State and Clemson, you can't honestly expect Duke and UNC to follow you on this what charade in the court system. They've got better things.
But again, a really good example. North Carolina was joining the lawsuit. They didn't.
Yeah, where's that?
Why? And again, I know this is common sense, and I'm the asshole, and I totally get it. Why would anybody else in this conference spend a penny to join the Florida State Clemson lawsuit? Is it going to help that case? It's not. adding every member of the ACC to this lawsuit would not strengthen their case, right? And again, if you're Florida State and Clemson, you need 8 other members to get out of the grant of rights. None of the other teams in the conference are joining your lawsuit to this point or willing to be one of 10 and leave the conference.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to watch you burn tens of millions of dollars litigating this case on their behalf. Because if all of these ACC members are so wildly unhappy, and when we say all, let's be very careful here. When Florida State and Clemson, when the Carolina schools and Duke, to a lesser extent Miami, are so unbelievably unhappy, why aren't they joining the lawsuit? Why aren't they spending their money? Because they don't have to. And I think most of the members of the ACC understand who they are and where they are. And I think Clemson doesn't. And I think now, and this goes back to the Kyle Whittingham comments last week. Kyle Whittingham basically said, hey, yeah, we're heading for a Super League. And I tell you, apply this comment from Kyle Whittingham while thinking about the ACC and how a year or so, and again, I just want to make sure, because I'm guessing people are freaking out about it. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. I in no way, shape, or form have been told or believe that Florida State and Clemson are leaving the ACC this week, or that a year or so from now will join the Big 12. But ask yourself, in the context of Florida State and Clemson leaving the ACC and the ACC melting down, who do you believe? The interwebs or Kyle Whittingham?
So much change already, and there's more on the horizon. I can tell you that. We're not done. I think it's ultimately going to get to 2 super conferences and their own playoff system, and probably break away from the NC2A. Have a commissioner and all. It's an NFL minor league model. I think is where we're heading in that regard.
There you go, Kyle Whittingham on 365 Sports.
Like, what else do you need to see? I mean, this is I can't think of a better way to say it, dude. Like, you have a D1 Power 4 like big wig
college football playoff
happen,
contender.
Yeah, like, come on, man. What, like, UNC and Duke and all these other big wigs in the ACC don't have motivation to get on board your little charade over here, as I like to call it. There's no point.
And as it was pointed out to me over the weekend, did everybody just forget about the lawsuit, the NIL lawsuit, and the tens of millions of dollars these schools each have to spend on settling that case? So if you're North Carolina, Duke, Miami, North Carolina State, are you going to jump onto another tens of millions of dollars worth of a bill and expense on top of your NIL settlement? No, you're not going to do that. There's no reason for you to do that. So all I ask of you, and we're going to get to the comment section, and you guys are going to lose your shit, and I get it. I don't know what I'm talking about. My sources are all, trust me, bro. Totally understand. I get it. This is why I don't get involved in Twitter. This is why I don't read notifications or DMs. Sorry if you've DM'd me, and I saw, and I will give. I want to say his name is Sparkle Jimmy. Sparkle.
Hey, Jimmy.
Sparkle James, who is a Florida State fan, who has found alternative means for sanity, as I believe he put it. Sparkle James is the one guy's DM that I read. Because yesterday when I logged in to look at my DMs, I had roughly 375 DMs. And just taking a cursory view, at least 100 of them were, dude, did you see this tweet? And it is, and I'm happy for Jason Shearer. I mean, that guy breaks his ass to be an independent. And if you guys don't know Jason Shearer, I would encourage you to go read his stuff on Arizona. He is by far the best Arizona guy.
Yeah.
It's not even close. I thought he was really good on the Pac-12 situation. He was obviously really good on this Bobby Robbins situation. Like, Jason Shearer does good work. which is why it's so surprising to me that he's tweeting about sources in the Big 12 believe Florida State and Clemson will join the league in a year or so.
So take a look at that wording, though, and that was the other point I wanted to make. The word, I love when reporters, and nothing against Jason, anybody that I see in the landscape, right? I love when I see the word sources believe X is going to happen. So you're telling me that someone told you that the opinion is that X item may or may not happen. Not, hey, I've been definitively told it is going to happen or it's not going to happen. Just that people believe it will happen.
Correct.
That would be like Woj tweeting, yeah, I believe that sources believe, Lauri Markkanen's going to get traded to the Dallas Stars in the NHL.
In a year or so.
In a year or so. Like, what are we doing, dude? Come on.
It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. And hey, man, I say more power to you.
And by the way, this is the type of thing that the Big 12 can't get wrapped up in. I just want to point that out too. The Big 12 can't afford to have, some rain cloud chilling over the conference as it pertains to expansion or realignment. Can't have that.
And I also think this is why the majority of people I spoke to about this were much more interested in talking about a super league. And we're much more like the first person I spoke to about this went directly to what Kyle Whittingham said. And I agree with the sentiment that that's not a year or so away. That's actively happening. The structure for a super league, 2 super conferences, whatever you want to call it, that's actively in the works.
Consolidation so we can all make more money.
Florida State and Clemson joining the Big 12 is not actively in the works. And it's on the channel. Go back and watch it if you like. It's what I told you 3 months ago. Brett Yormark and his emissaries are talking to everybody. And if we look back at history, what we reported during the Pac-12 meltdown, Brett Yormark has done an exceptional job of building a network of relationships with BYU and Utah. Tom Homo acting as a conduit for communication between the Big 12 and Utah. It's exactly how he does business. We told you then what we'll tell you now. Brett Yormark has talked to everybody in the ACC. I understand that Florida State and Clemson, because of their litigation, they're the sexy one to pick on. Knock yourself out, man. They're not in any way, shape, or form in a position to say, yeah, we'll join your league in a year or so. Give us a year or so and we'll join your league.
Why don't you call me back? Let's set up a Google Calendar reminder for a year from now, and we can talk about signing the paperwork.
There's no...
Come on.
And I just will continue to say, the money doesn't make sense. Use common sense. Does the money make sense for Florida State to pass on an SEC or a Big Ten invite? Because anybody that thinks the Big Ten or the SEC, and I think it's the SEC, it's just my opinion based on people I've spoken to, that the SEC is the only fit for Florida State. Does anybody think that the SEC is going to pass on Florida State? Just a straw poll here on little old Monty Show.
Right.
Does anybody here think that the SEC passes on Florida State?
No.
Because I can't see that happening. And if you're Florida State, are you taking the Big 12 over the SEC? Now, in Bobby Bowden's times, Bobby Bowden straight up said, yeah, we chose the ACC over the SEC because it was an easier path. Well, that's no longer the path. That's no longer the BCS isn't here anymore. And I think we learned something last year. The ACC is not exactly the easiest path, even if you are undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, if you ask Norvell and the boys in Tallahassee, are you going to tell me they don't believe they're one of the 12 best teams in the country?
Yeah, I believe they're one of the 12 best teams in the country. I think most people do. The problem is you weren't one of the best 4 teams in the country last year. And that just is what it is. But I think the reality of the situation is that nobody is going to go out of their way to help these two. And that to me is the point that you can't get away from. There's nobody that's going to say, yeah, you know what? We're going to pour all of our money into this. We're going to just go out of our way to make sure that this happens. For what? For what? There's no, I'm a huge believer when it comes to business, especially in college athletics. So you have to have motivation in all parties for something to happen. So the Super League, everyone's got motivation, right? We're going to open it up. We're going to make more money. The path is going to be clear.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense right now for whoever, like in the ACC, to follow these two because nothing good happens to them. It doesn't help them.
And again, one of my TV guys, one of my top go-to TV guys, made a great point the other day. Can you imagine being Florida State? You've got your governor, you've got your attorney general, you've got all of the assets at the university and the state level deployed to help you. You're spending tens of millions of dollars so that you can leave the ACC to join the Big 12. And I quite enjoy the Big 12.
Great conference.
I'm a Notre Dame fan. We don't win shit. So I enjoy the Big. I'm not ripping the Big 12, but are you spending all of this money, time, assets, resources, humanity to leave the ACC to join? That you're not. There's no way that you're, unless the SEC and the Big Ten tell you to pound sand, which I don't think they're going to. And then all of this says, Super League's not happening, which I think it is.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. Make sure you join us on Prize Picks, prizepicks.com. Use the promo code Monty to get 100% deposit matching. College football, the NFL are here. Training camps are open. Don't wait. Do it today. Download the Prize Picks app. Use the promo code Monty. 100% deposit matching up to $100. Trust me when I say it is easy to do better than Jake on Prize Picks because, frankly, he never wins anything.
It's true.
I love Prize Picks, whether it's golf, whether it is the Euros, this disaster at the Copas last night in Miami. We'll get to that in a while. Any sport you love, Major League Baseball, certainly fantastic on Prize Picks. It is so much fun. It is daily fantasy at its best. Join the tens of millions in their community already playing daily fantasy at prizepicks.com. Use the promo code Monty. Who's first one in this morning? Let's go all the way back to the top, which is always Little Jizzy is first one in today. Welcome, Jizlets. Pete Forte, hello. Ryan Smith's receding hairline. We show up. Hello.
We show up.
There you are. Midweek Coug. Hello. Big Blue Horses. Hello. Matt Ritson. Hello.
Morning hyenas.
There you go. Mike Smith, Mountain Mama. How dare the SEC come into Dallas, an ACC country?
Yeah, seriously.
Again, I think it's very interesting that you have the Big 12 in Las Vegas for not 1 but 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why are you not doing Big 12 Media Day in Dallas? That, for me, that's a hill you die on.
100%. And the only logical thought with it would be that, hey, we've brought in, Western wing of the conference here, frankly, from the Pac-12, and maybe you were just looking to satiate that. You were looking to say, okay, the first media day that, these 4 new schools are going to have with us, we'll do it in Vegas. But I agree, to do it for 2 years and not be in Dallas is a little surprising.
Mike Smith, the problem is Jason Scheer didn't not say it was a done deal, but those reading it and then passing it on, the info basically says it is. Jason Scheer, and again, I want to make sure I get this right. Jason Scheer said he was told by sources in the Big 12 that they believe Florida State and Clemson will join the Big 12 in a year or so, I believe is the exact verbiage he used. Okay. I can think of two universities in the Big 12 that we probably have not talked to about this at one time or not. Nobody has said, "Oh yeah, we're
all about it."
And I having sources at Arizona State, and on the Arizona Board of Regents, nobody there believes it. I just think it's a bunch of hyperbole. I think it's a bunch of people's opinions. I don't know who Jason Scheer talked to. I have no reason to believe that he would make up why would he make that up? Like, but what I'm telling you is it's a ridiculous belief. There's just no, it's crazy to me. That shirt, Monty, I feel like I'm at a theater watching the start of a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I walked in and I said, nice shirt, dude. I mean, I like the shirt.
It is what it is. Mike Smith, I like the shirt. Thank you. Are we really debating my shirt?
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
Shirts on the show are a thing, man. I've gotten beat over the head for my teal shirt in prior shows.
Okay. Well, I recently on our trip to Hawaii, I left a drawer full of polo shirts in Kauai. And the Weston was so lovely about it. But they threw them in a box and mailed them back to me. So yesterday being laundry day, all of my polo shirts are clean. I have like 30 polo shirts hanging in my closet begging to be worn. So, James, stadium guy and loves Buc-ee's. I got into an argument with a knothead on Twitter. Again, you guys, don't get on.
Yeah, it's just a waste of your time.
Your life is worth more than whatever happens on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
It's sad that it's turned into that too, because Twitter used to be a good thing.
But again, with everything that happened this weekend, have we not learned that keyboard warrior words matter? So when you get into it with guys on Twitter, or it's why I don't read DMs. It's why I don't read my notifications. It's why I don't respond to people on Twitter, because 9 out of 10 people on Twitter are just there to feel better about themselves. And usually that means that they're going to insult people and get into it with people. And it's really unfortunate, because I actually think there is a good community and there are good conversations to be had on Twitter, or X to be correct. But I just don't believe that is the norm anymore on Twitter. It's what got everybody off of Facebook all those years ago now, that you couldn't believe a thing you saw on Facebook, right? And it's where we're going. It's remarkable to me that people think, oh, well, you won't answer me on Twitter, I'm going to message you on Instagram, or I'm going to block you on Instagram. I don't read people's... Social media is ugly.
Yeah.
Social media is negative. And the sad thing is, we have so many people that get validation in their lives on social media, especially in our business, in sports. And so many people are so interested in being right. And when you, like, how many times on the show have people come in the comment section, you've never been right about anything? Or on Twitter, you were telling me last week, some guy was like, you've never been right on anything. Here's all the things you're wrong about. And he listed all the things we were right about.
Yeah.
And to the point where everybody was like, well, actually, all those things happen.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. It is to the point where I was talking to a guy at a Big 12 university last week, and we laughed about it. Because and I don't care if you hate that I say it, we were so far ahead of the curve on Pac-12, the Pac-12 melting down, and we had the Pac-12 apologists apologizing to us.
Yeah.
Because of the things they had said about us.
Oh, and I just think that the thing you got to keep in mind with Twitter is it's just easier to hate. Like, people, it is the easy button to come in and be like, hey, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're not right about anything, nice shirt, you're an idiot. That's just what people do. Like, it's just,
you're
it's
fat,
culture,
you're stupid,
dude.
Nobody likes you. Like,
when instead, if you would just say, hey, yeah, you know what, you guys nailed the Pac-12 situation. You nailed the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert thing with the Jazz. You've been pretty good on the Jazz.
You've been great on Big 12 expansion. Haven't missed, right? Like, look at this story with, and all of these stories about Big 12 expansion. Who told you Brett Yormark and his people were talking to Duke and Carolina? Who told you they reached out to the Virginia schools? Who told you that they reached out to Louisville? Proof is in the pudding,
We're not
man.
telling you we believe they reached out to them. We're telling you they did.
I got into an argument with a knothead on Twitter about this, and I was roasted for saying the grant of rights was ironclad. People don't like the truth.
What did you think they were going to say?
People don't like the truth. The grant of rights, call it what you want, the ACC grant of rights, they've been trying in earnest for 3 years. And we talk about tens of millions of dollars they've put into this lawsuit. Has anybody thought about the legal fees that Florida State and others have spent exploring the grant of rights and trying to find a hole in it? I mean, are they at $50 million? Has to be.
I mean, maybe we should start saying
Has
Florida
to be.
State's not paying the bill, their donors are, because you can't tell me it's just coming out of the budget.
And the thing I say about the grant of rights is if there was a loophole or a way out, they wouldn't be asking for unredacted copies of the TV contract. You would be out of it already. If it was so easy, do you really think the people at Florida State are stupid? They're wildly intelligent, very good at what they do, and they're paying the best legal minds they can find. And they're great attorneys. Their legal representation is fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you really think those people wouldn't have gotten out of that grant of rights already if it was possible? No, because if it was possible, they wouldn't be in court, and they wouldn't be asking about TV contracts, and they wouldn't be, you wouldn't be talking about how embarrassing SMU is to the conference.
Yeah.
But you are, because there's no way out of that grant of rights.
Well, and I think that that's the hard part for the ACC is like the SMU thing happened, and then obviously Calford, and now you're here. And at some point, your reputation as a conference starts to come into question a bit. Like, okay, obviously, maybe the way people view the ACC right now is not the best, but I think the other side of the coin is, hey, you're still making the money. You've got a contract that says you're getting
Correct.
paid this
Yes.
baseline of money for what is another 12 years, I believe it is.
Correct.
So you have more security financially.
Which is what you opted into.
Yeah, you signed it not once but twice.
That's why you signed it.
That was the selling point. So I just have a hard time believing that this is nothing more than FSU and Clemson trying to keep up with the Joneses financially. When instead, and this to me is the real ball buster, what you should be doing is you should just go out into the marketplace and capture more money into your program,
100%.
dude.
I agree.
Like, just go get the money. It's there.
Two Masta, excuse me. Oh, God. Jason Shear isn't Drake. Who's Drake Toll? You mean like the rapper Drake? Or Greg Swaim. God rest his soul, because wasn't Greg Swaim dying?
I literally don't know if, I don't know. I have
Is
no
Greg
idea what
Swaim
happened.
dead? Because didn't Greg Swaim say he was going
At
into
one
hospice
point,
and his
yeah.
life was over?
Yeah.
So let's not joke about Greg Swaim, because
Yeah.
I have no idea. But his track record is way better. So I don't know who Drake Toll is, and Greg Swaim I'm hoping is not dead. His track record is way better. Jason Shear, as I said before, and if I made you feel any other way, let me be very clear. I have a lot of respect for the work that Jason Shear does. I would encourage you to, I believe he is Wildcat Authority, is the name of his entity. I would encourage you to go and subscribe. Support journalists, support independent people like Jason Shear. He is a guy that works hard. He is a guy that works in earnest. I think he does a really good job. I'm really surprised he tweeted that.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised he tweeted that. And for
And
whatever,
not only did he tweet it, he pinned it to the top of his feed.
whatever his motivation was, and if you're looking at it, read it directly. What's the exact
The
tweet?
exact tweet is, according to sources, there is an internal belief in the Big 12 that Florida State and Clemson are likely to join the conference within the next year or so.
Are likely to join the conference within the next year or so.
So believe, likely, next year or so, which to me is a lot of generalization, which to me says we're not reporting any facts. Again, nothing against Jason. I'm just trying to point out to you guys, he's not saying 100%, no question about it, within the year they're going to join. That's not what the tweet says.
And again, background is we used to work in Arizona, and Jason, the whole Sweaty Sean situation at Arizona, we know Jason's work. We know it's good work. I'm surprised by that tweet. And again, go subscribe to Wildcat Authority Country, or what's the name of his?
Yeah, Wildcat Authority.
Wildcat Authority.
Yeah, wildcatauthority.com.
Support the guy. I mean, he's an independent guy that creates really good content. I'm surprised he tweeted that.
And the other guy in this comment that's being referenced is Buddy, who brought you the Pac-2 are going to get paid $600 million. So
who's that?
Drake Toll.
Oh, he's inside whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Locked on Big 12.
Yeah. Self-explanatory. Next comment.
You guys. And what's it? The guy that used to watch the show that is on their show.
Immaculate. Yeah.
It's not personal.
Yeah,
I don't know Immaculate. I don't know Drake Toll. When somebody tells you that the Pac-2 are going to fight and they're not going to allow the college football playoff
you remember what
change their policies.
Kurt Schultz is the hero that we deserve.
And that they're going to get $600 million. You guys, come on. Like in Two Masta, Jason Shear isn't Drake Toll or Greg Swaim. Again, I don't know Greg Swaim. There was that whole thing. This is what's so funny to me. I don't fucking care. Yeah. Like all of these people that talk about us and tweet at us and Insta snap face at us and talk about us on their YouTube channels and knock yourself out, man. I don't care. The truth is, I'm in a stage in my life where I really don't care what other people think. I'm not 20 years old begging for you to watch my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I am not. I am here to tell you that guys like Jason Shear are very good at what they do. Again, I encourage you to go and subscribe to his Wildcat Authority because it's excellent Big 12 coverage.
It is.
Of one of the premier basketball brands in the country, I would remind you.
And allegedly, based on the preseason media poll, a top 5 team in the Big 12 on the football field. Allegedly.
Mike Smith. Yeah. Swaim is basically saying it's a done deal. So Greg Swaim is alive. Greg Swaim said that am I wrong about this?
No, he did. I remember. He said on Twitter, he was tweeting at you, I believe, had said that, hey, I'm in the hospital on my deathbed.
I'm going into hospice is what I remember.
Yeah. I would have to go and dig it up. I'm not going to do that, but it was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. So
I don't know. I'm right along with my guy here. I don't spend much time on Twitter. So
OG Gary, even I don't believe Clemson and Florida State are going to the 12. Seems like a collision course with the SEC. I don't know how it's not.
Yeah.
I really don't know how it's not. Preach, Monsignor. Okay. Okay. Joshua Taylor, and we don't generally, so if you guys are, and there's clearly a lot of new people on the show today, generally we do not read non-member comments. So when there's a bunch of new people on the show, I will pick and choose. A guy like Two Masta's been here. Okay, so I'm more likely to read that. San Diego State Glenn is an original on this show. Like, I love my dude. Like, Joshua Taylor.
Never seen you before.
Don't disappoint us. Yes, 0 F's given, though. I do like your thumbnail. Grant of rights and media are separate, but the value of the grant of rights is tied to the media. So the question has always been, how much value should Florida State or Clemson pay if there's no media past 2027? Well, and there is an option for ESPN, but ESPN, and I think this is a very good question, by the way. ESPN is in full control of whether their option's picked up or not. ESPN is also, and people lose their shit when I say this, ESPN is also going to be a large determining factor on if there is a super conference or a super league or not. ESPN wants a super league. I have talked to people there. I have sources very high up in television. CBS, all of the networks, Fox and ESPN, obviously, but CBS and NBC, they're all in favor of it. And NBC is willing to use Notre Dame's relationship as a position of strength and a bargaining chip, which they would have to do, because a lot of people, I think, forget this. They would have to do that because NBC now, until it's not, and I can't see a time where it's not, NBC will always have home games for Notre Dame football. That relationship is ironclad. They are willing to pay a premium to keep Notre Dame football. So the TV networks ultimately will decide this, because I'd also remind you, ESPN and ABC, Disney just signed a long-term extension on the college football playoff, which Kirk Schultz was supposed to block to get his $600 million. That was never happening. But my point is, when you look at this equation that Joshua's talking about, you're exactly right. Like, you look at how much value should Florida State and Clemson pay if there's no media past this. And this is the again, another great example. Everybody is telling you ESPN is going to opt out of the ACC deal. Why would they do that? Why would they just hand all those members back leverage? Why would they do that? There's no reason for them to do that. They have a massive say and stake in what Florida State does. Now, again, I know I don't know shit from Shinola. Who has the SEC TV deal?
Last time I checked, that was ESPN.
ESPN and ABC. Who's got the ACC deal? ESPN and ABC. Who's got the Big 12 deal?
Let me think.
ESPN
that's right.
and ABC.
That's right.
So ESPN and ABC, Jimmy Pitaro, he's going to make the decision on where Florida State and Clemson end up. And furthermore, I go back and make this argument. He's going to make the decision on where Duke and Carolina end up. Because Jimmy Pitaro right now, and I am certain the folks at the ACC have had this conversation because I've been told they have. The ACC, very wisely so, is already exploring what would it take to let Clemson and Florida State out of their deal. Well, here's scenario A, B, and C, right? Like the ACC has played all of this out. What if we lose? What if we win? What if we settle? What's the settlement number? What if do you think there's a settlement with Florida State and Clemson to let them out of the grant of rights in the TV contract, to let them take back their rights to their home TV games? Because that's what, and again, when you want to smoke somebody out who doesn't know what they're talking about, that TV contract, look at Notre Dame. Does NBC have Notre Dame road games? They do not. These TV rights almost always are about home games, which is why, what does the SEC want? They want more league games. Why is that? It offers more value and they can sell for a higher level to their TV. It's a money play. So if you truly believe that Florida State and Clemson are leaving, what's the price to get their home broadcast back? It's exceptionally high, as it should be, because you're not only screwing the ACC, you're screwing ABC and ESPN, who have the rights to the SEC and they have the rights to the Big 12. Is that a relationship you want to burn? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So all of this to say, this in a year or so nonsense is just nonsense. ESPN and Jimmy Pitaro have far more say about where Florida State's going than Florida State has where they're going. And I think people don't want to believe that.
No, they don't like it. Seemingly nobody likes ESPN, which again, I just don't understand.
Yeah,
I mean,
you don't have to like it, but it is what it is.
Yeah,
it is what it is. UW fan Jim, your sources alone make the show great. Plus, you guys are okay too. Well, and we're good looking.
Yeah,
Overlord Karen from Endeavor is pulling. Endeavor plays a huge part because Endeavor's got relationships are value. That is a large part of your value. It's fair. Love that helmet. Jalen Daniels better stay healthy. I've learned that Locked On is hyperbole and tabloid-like, just my opinion. Well, those guys, again, it's a business, you guys. The guys at Locked On get paid for views. They're not on salary. Because David Locke, the broadcaster of the Jazz, has done an unbelievable job.
Yeah.
Building the Locked On network. He's got a fast channel for it. They've got podcast. He's done a great job. He's only been able to do that because he does not have those guys on salary. Some are, most are not. They get paid on views. That's why stuff like this matters. Now, Jason Scheer obviously is not, I don't believe, on the Locked On network, but I don't know. But guys like Locked On whatever, those guys all get paid per views and in downloads.
And 99% of them have another job.
Yeah. Steve Sapanic, how are you, my friend? I hope you're healthy. Remember, everyone, like and share the Monty Show. Yes, please hit the like button. Stepanek also says all teams are stuck in the ACC for the duration. I would agree with that. You're going to have to, one of two things I think is the only way out. Find you and 9 other members of your conference that will have to include Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Duke, and Notre Dame. If those 5 are not in agreement to get out, it's not happening. Because Notre Dame carries incredible sway outside of football and basketball. They are so incredibly important to the overall health of that conference with their non-revenue generating sports, because Notre Dame funds those at a high level. They bring people to the gate like they make you money being a partner. Notre Dame is going to have to agree to that. And Swarbrick now, remember, Jack Swarbrick retired. So that's a huge shift in I don't want to say theory. I feel like that's a big word, but that's a huge shift in thinking. Jack was very much a hardline protect the ACC guy.
Yeah, philosophical change.
Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know, though.
Yeah. Look, I think college football is going through that a little bit, though. Like whether it's Jack or Nick Saban, or
I would agree.
You've got a lot of these guys who, even the Dabo thing. I mean, you wind the clocks back to when it was Fivehead and Dabo winning natties, and you'd have thought that Clemson was going to control the college football world, and it's very surprising. But since then, Dabo hasn't done anything, and I think, frankly, when Clemson's good, it's better for college football.
Is that shocking to you how bad Clemson?
Yeah, it is.
And I want to be careful. Not how bad Clemson is. Am I the only one that is surprised they're just not a factor anymore?
Yeah, I think the word is mediocre. With all due respect, you're mediocre. You're not an elite program right now, as Dabo says, right? You're not like this program that is constantly churning and bringing in the best talent and, competing again with the SEC guys in the college football playoff, because that's how good Clemson was. And I think people tend to forget that Trevor Lawrence, Clemson, dude, they were amazing. Like, you were punishing the SEC, and now you're not.
Yeah.
You're not even as good as Florida State is, and I don't have Florida State being on the same field as Georgia and the SEC guys.
When I worked at ESPN, we joked that the ACC was the already crowned Clemson conference, and look at where they are now, which is pretty much an indictment on Jimbo Fisher at the time.
Yeah.
And others. But look at where Clemson is, and you look at what Norvell meant to Florida State and the absolute revitalization of that football program. And you can do this. You look at what Sark has brought to Texas. What will Kalen DeBoer mean to Alabama, and by extension Fish at Washington? Like, guys go into programs and they raise the bar. And then there's Dabo, who is stuck in what he wants it to be instead of dealing with the facts and the atmosphere of what it is.
Yeah.
And those are two different types of dudes. You look at Alabama's landed 2 4-star recruits in 3 days. Like Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, I think people doubted his ability to recruit. I remember the day it happened on this show. We were talking about it. We didn't doubt his ability to recruit. The only thing I have questions about with DeBoer is his ability to run the program at the level or anywhere near the level that Saban was running it at. Because nobody talks about the fact that Alabama was a machine. You weren't just recruiting at Alabama under Nick Saban. They were the standard. If you wanted to go to the NFL and you were a 5-star, 4-star kid, you were going to Bama. And if you couldn't get into Bama because they didn't have any slots, you were going to Georgia. And does that dynamic change?
And now look at Kirby.
Yeah. Dude.
In our members-only Instagram chat, the number of traffic violations since that deadly accident, it's remarkable.
Like,
how many of those guys have gotten traffic-related speeding DUIs?
A lot.
Yeah, it's crazy. Baston Mapes says FSU should just stay and be the face of the ACC. They don't see Kyle bringing that Utah Red Hawk to a. Well, you'll have to finish that.
Yeah, not sure what that means.
They need to. I don't see them getting out. I guess that's the biggest. I just, unless you buy your way out, and unless there is some bombshell in the TV contract, which I'm told there's not, by people who know that contract letter by letter, I'm told there is not some bombshell in the ESPN ACC contract. It's largely boilerplate language, which some detail built in to accommodate the intricacies and the details of the ACC, or the uniqueness of the ACC. But there is no bombshell in that contract. If we assume that the contract between the ACC and ESPN is not filled with, well, don't tell anybody, but, right, that I think FSU and Clemson are going to have a steep hill to climb to win that case. And I think that's why it's filed in multiple jurisdictions. And anyway, here nor there. I think it's going to be very difficult to get an ultimate ending through a judge's gavel. So if you consider that, and then you ask yourself, what is the likelihood here? Let's assume they lose the case. That's the best opportunity to find 9 other members to break the grant of rights. Because at that point, if Florida State and Clemson lose the case, the grant of rights is rock solid. You're not getting out.
Right.
That's, I mean, an unfavorable ruling for Florida State and Clemson tell you that grant of rights is it's got balls. So you got to find 9 other members to get out. That's the only way you get out.
Or you could try to leverage the conference in some way to settle. Like I still, this has been my main point. Why try to force it through the courts? Why not go to the conference and say, hey man, what does it look like to settle? Like, what are we even talking about?
Well, I think they probably, because I don't want to speak in fact, but they've probably done that, because the ACC has had negotiations and conversations around a settlement number, not the $500, $700 million ridiculousness. But what is that number? The problem is that's an ESPN question, because you're not trying to get out of the grant of rights. First, you've got to get out and get your TV rights back. What's that number? Right? And that equation exists. But if you're Florida State, are you doing that without calling ESPN? Of course you're not. If you're Florida State and you call ESPN and let's say Big Ten, because that's really the only avenue without ESPN. Hey, our desire is to go to the Big Ten. Do they just hang up on you? Oh, sorry, bad cell signal, gotta go. Is ESPN having hey, it's Florida State, they want to go to the Big Ten, Jimmy, you want to take that call? Nah, I'm in a meeting. They're not going to help you go to the Big Ten. That's a huge football brand. Huge football brand. You're not, with a huge following, big alumni. It just it does not pencil out. It's fair. Jake, should viewers be less critical of ESPN given how conference realignment has taken so many rivalries from college athletics?
How is it taking rivalries from college athletics?
Well, and the first thing I would ask is how do you play that out? Okay, so tell me, what exactly is it? Like, I don't understand what rivalries are you missing?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to understand. A lot of people say that, like, oh, well, we lost the Pac-12, or like, conference realignment is shifting. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the last time I checked, Utah and BYU are reigniting the rivalry, right? Last time I checked, we still get Notre Dame and SC. Like, we're still going to get Bama and LSU. We're still getting, Bama, Auburn. We haven't lost. Like, I'm just curious, what are you, it looks like you're a Kansas fan?
Clearly.
So what rivalry is Kansas lost? It's not like Kansas State left the conference, right? So I don't know. I'm not sure which rivalry you think we've lost.
I mean, I think you're looking at, obviously in the Big 12, it's great to have the Holy War back. I think if you look at,
if you want to point to OU, Oklahoma, they're still going to play that game, or Oklahoma State, OU, they're still going to play that game.
On some level, I guess. I don't know how or when, but
they're going to get that back on the schedule. That's going to happen. They're going to figure that out. Like,
I'm not even going into Oklahoma State today. But I mean, I don't think ESPN's responsible for rivalries going away. I just don't believe that.
I think if you want to point to anybody,
and show me how, if you want to explain that.
Yeah, I mean, I would point to the conference leadership in the Pac-12 because the question's about realignment. So if it's a realignment question, you're obviously referencing the Pac-12, and now obviously these teams moving to the Big 12, the SEC, and the Big 10, and the ACC, I guess by that measure. So yeah, I mean, I just don't know what rivalries have we really lost. Like, I don't see it.
Mape says, "Got you to say it, Monty."
I don't think you got him to say anything, bro.
What did you get me to say?
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about. The only way FSU stays in the ACC is if they get SEC money inside of it. I don't.
But again, Jimmy, like that play doesn't even work, because by the time the grant of rights and that whole situation plays itself out 12 years from now, we're going to have a Super League.
Yeah.
Like, so the SEC thing just respectfully doesn't matter.
It's fair, says, for starters, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma State. Well, Oklahoma State has on the record multiple times says they don't want to play the game.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State has no desire to play that game. So is that, and again, I point out, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma didn't leave ESPN. Oklahoma left the Big 12. Is that, so you think it's better for Oklahoma to be in the SEC and ESPN engineered that? And if Oklahoma and Oklahoma State wanted to play, they could play. Oklahoma State doesn't want that game because they can't win it.
And by the way, isn't Oklahoma, Texas a bigger rivalry?
I just don't know that makes a lot of sense. Phoenix Master. It's funny because in case of Arizona, they gained a rivalry back by moving to the Big 12.
Yeah. Like, I just don't know. Like, I just don't think the point of, hey, ESPN's taking rivalries away is a valid one, man. Like, I think that ESPN needs the rivalries. The rivalries are what power viewership. Like the Notre Dame SC Caleb Williams just turning into a charity in that last game with all the interceptions. That rivalry is why so many people saw that.
And again, I just ask you, why are you fighting for Mike Gundy?
Great question.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
By the way, he's not going to get punished, by the way. Just, while we're talking about Mike, that's not going to happen. There won't be discipline.
Yeah, that's, which I don't want to hear about. Kim Coulter, hello. Pew, pew. Super League is here 5 years or less, which is, again, why I don't know that it makes a lot of sense for Florida State and Clemson to, in a year or so, join the Big 12, right? Dakota Tubbs, it's fair. The border war comes back to the football field next year. It does. It does. Kay Sumbry, hello. Let's go, Gundy. Hey, I just want to understand why you fight for a guy who doesn't win at the highest levels, never has, never will, and does not want to play Oklahoma. The rivalries are gone. SEC Media Days kick off today in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question that I'm certain will piss everybody off. Is the SEC the best conference in college football?
I don't even think it's a question. I think that, but like if you want to try to make the point that the Big Ten's better with the new additions, you're welcome to do that. But they're going to have to show that they're better. I think even before we talk about Texas and how great they are, the SEC to me is the most dominant conference on the field. And I think this year for the SEC, the only question is, how good will Texas be? Because I'm not convinced they're going to win it in year one, but they're certainly going to be right in the middle of that fight. And I think that it really will come down to how good Georgia is.
And I think there's a real chance that they get 4 teams at a minimum into the college football playoff. I mean, if we look at, I think Georgia and Bama are locks. I think Alabama wins 10 games. I know we've gone over that schedule.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest question is somebody like a Georgia. Does Georgia go undefeated? Okay, great. It doesn't matter how many they lose. They're getting into the college football playoff because I think they might lose 2. They're getting into the college football playoff, right? Here's a question for you. Does Brian Kelly and LSU figure out how to play defense? Because if they do, they'll win 10 games. They're getting into the college football playoff at that point. That's 3 right there. We haven't even talked about, like look at Missouri. Missouri's Cook is back at Missouri. Like he's going to be one of the more experienced quarterbacks in college football. Is that a 9-win team? If they win 9 games, and a team of that caliber, I would think, I don't know how much you backslide. Are you TCU and there's a lot of snaps you're not competitive in? Okay, you'll probably win 7 games then. But my guess, when you have that caliber of quarterback, I think you're going to have a chance to win 10, maybe 10 games.
Yeah.
That's a big one, right? And then you look at Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is the great unknown. Ole Miss is going to have a shot to win 11 games. And if they win 11 games, they're in the college football playoff.
And I do think that Lane Kiffin's got to get over the hump in the SEC. And I'm not saying that's easy to do when you're competing with the caliber team he's competing with. But there can't be as wide of a gap between Ole Miss and the big boys as there currently is. Like that Georgia beatdown last year was not cool. Like I didn't expect, I don't remember the final score of that game, but you were just not all that competitive in that game.
And again, I know we've talked about this exact thing, I think last week, but they don't really have a game until October 12th at LSU. Ole Miss's schedule: Furman, Middle Tennessee State at Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, South Carolina on the road, and then they're at LSU.
Yeah, I mean, what is that, 7-0 before LSU? 6-0?
6-0. Oklahoma, that's a win. That's at home. At Arkansas is a win. Georgia, at Florida, Mississippi State. There's a chance, in my opinion, because I think they are, and I think Lane Kiffin has done a phenomenal job building a program. I think there's a chance they lose 2 games. And obviously, with Georgia being in Oxford, you're going to have a real good chance to win that game. And my question is the game at the Swamp a letdown game? That's the game you have to ask yourself if they go to Gainesville and have a letdown game. Because if they don't, what is that? 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a chance they win 11 games.
Well, and the only thing I'd say about the Georgia game is when you're playing that game. Is that a November game, October game,
yes.
November game?
Yeah, and good luck going to LSU and winning, because that's going to be a hell of a place to go and win a game.
So that's kind of what I'm saying is like you're going to play LSU and Georgia in that window that we as college football fans just salivate for all year long, where you're playing for college football spots. You got to win the game to get in. And it's going to be heat. And I think, by the way, I think some of the best Georgia performances that we get is when they are on the road. And it's like, well, hey, you're in Oxford. Like, hey, mate, like, and then they show up and they do their thing. So I don't know. I mean, I would agree. I think that's got 10 wins written all over it.
Yeah. And again, let's just look at Alabama, because I know you're all tired of hearing about Alabama. But I just ask you, Kalen DeBoer, sure, he lost some talent, but he had a phenomenal 4 days with recruiting. And he's got what I think is going to be a real meat grinder game at Wisconsin. Wisco is going to be significantly better. He's got balls. That game, September 14th at Camp Randall. And he follows that up with Georgia 2 weeks later. So you get a bye week before the Georgia game, and that game is in Tuscaloosa. So we'll see.
What do, just on a surface level, what do people think DeBoer and Alabama should be? Do you think it should be 10 wins? Like, is that just the expectation because it's Alabama?
It should be 10 wins. They should be better than, and again, I just am curious. I'm putting Jalen Milroe as a top 3 guy in college football.
Yeah, you should.
I think he's a Heisman finalist.
And I think he will improve more under DeBoer than he would have under Saban.
I would agree with that. So I think Jalen Milroe is going to be elite. He's going to have a center, by the way, who can snap him the football in the gun.
Good.
I know it's crazy. Here's the question. I think they start they start 4-0. 5-0 at Vanderbilt, 6-0 South Carolina. How good is Tennessee? Because they got to go Rocky Top. That game is middle of October. You are at full voice. You are playing your best football. It's October 19th.
Tough place to go and play, though.
But if you're a good team, you go to Tennessee and win.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a chance when Missouri goes to Tuscaloosa, they're getting an undefeated Alabama team. Now, there's also a chance they get a 3-loss Alabama team.
There is.
But I think they'll be undefeated. And I think we need Alabama undefeated going to Death Valley.
Yeah.
We need primetime football November 9th.
That's the game I always talk about where I love ESPN, but I wish it was CBS for that game. CBS's coverage, I think that was like 3-4 years ago.
Vern.
Yes, dude. It was just all the vibes. But either way, I agree. Undefeated heading to LSU is what we deserve.
We need that. And then the real game is November 16th. Mercer at Oklahoma and then Auburn. I think the SEC is by far the best conference in college football.
Yeah.
And I think, is anybody surprised here that they get 4 teams in? I would not be surprised at all. OG Gary says 8-4 Alabama. I don't see 4 losses on that schedule.
Who knew that the LSU fan was hating on Alabama?
Western Kentucky, South Florida, both in Tuscaloosa. At Wisconsin, okay, give them that loss, 1. Georgia, okay, 2. They're beating Vanderbilt, South Carolina. I think they're better than Tennessee. They're better than Missouri because it's at home. Okay, Homer, they lose to LSU. So you're telling me they're going to lose to Mercer at Oklahoma or Auburn? And that Auburn game, the Iron Bowl's in Tuscaloosa.
And please don't try to sell me that Oklahoma's beating Alabama.
And I would, Kalen DeBoer's record against elite competition, I think he's 12-2.
Yeah.
They're not losing.
And by the way, it took Michigan as far as you could take Michigan.
They're not losing 4 games.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would get there. It's fair. How would this year's college football season change conference realignment? Example, if FSU or Oregon State end up having impressive seasons, is there a chance they get a call? I think FSU's already branded.
Yeah.
That's an elite program. The problem for Oregon State and Washington State is now they've been stripped down. They're sitting on blocks with no motor and no engine block in the compartment, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're stripped down programs. And your next move is critical. My question is, what is the value versus the competition? If you are Oregon State and Washington State, you don't currently have a position of value versus 9 out of 10 teams in the ACC. If you are the Big 12, are you more worried about Corvallis and Spokane? Or are you more worried about Louisville, Miami, Tobacco Road?
Signature markets.
Because, and I'm sure this will be misquoted. I am telling you, the linchpin of the ACC is not Florida State, it's North Carolina. Every conference wants North Carolina. The Big Ten, I think, from what I hear regularly, the Big Ten and North Carolina want each other. They're going to smash. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
But I think North Carolina, if the ACC melts down and you're Oregon State and Washington State, you're not North Carolina, you're not Duke, you're not Florida State, are you Clemson? You're not. Are you Virginia Tech? You're not. Are you Louisville? You're not. Are you Miami? You're not. You don't have history. You don't have tradition. You don't have that. You don't have that swagger. So we can talk about other, how does Oregon State and Washington State put themselves in a position of value? They only get back to the biggest games if there's a Super League, because they will not be first choice in any league, and that includes the Big 12. Because my feeling is the next round of realignment, and I can only say it so many times, Brett Yormark is, in my opinion, going to end up with one of the Virginia schools, and I think the University of Virginia, the Cavaliers go to the Big Ten. I think Virginia Tech, Louisville, I think he really wants Miami, and I think he really would like to try and sell Duke, and I just don't know that Duke can be sold on the Big 12.
No, Duke, if you're Duke, you're not doing that. But I do think Florida, in my opinion, is a battleground state for these conferences. I think that's why the argument of, well, Florida State's just going to go to the Big 12, that you're an idiot. Florida State is going to the SEC.
I think that's really tough.
And I think if you're the Big 12, this is what I've been saying about the Big 10 as well. Like the Big 10 is going to be all over trying to get Miami into their conference when the time comes. You're going to take Miami and you're going to take Clemson. Clemson's not an SEC team. That's a Big 10 team, that 100%. And I just think the state of Florida, it's why it has multiple schools in different conferences, right? It's why, you've got UCF in the Big 12, improving, going the right direction.
Yep.
It's why Florida not being good in the SEC is such a problem. Imagine if we looked at the SEC schedules and Florida was actually a college football playoff contender. Like, how much does that change your conference?
Oh my God.
Like, it changes it a ton, and it makes college football that much better. Like, we need that.
I think you add 4 teams if you're the Big 12, and I think you add Gonzaga in basketball. The biggest problem with a UConn, you're not subsidizing football. That's a problem. And people have repeatedly been saying, well, UConn could get out of football. The infrastructure they've invested, I seriously doubt that.
Yeah.
I think Virginia Tech, if I had to guess today, Virginia ends up in the Big 10 if the ACC melts down. Virginia ends up in the Big 10. Virginia Tech winds up in the Big 12 with Pitt, Louisville, and
NC State.
I don't know. NC State's kind of a wild card. They are, and we broke this story as well, they are independent of North Carolina. They do not have to follow North Carolina. Is that a good ad for the Big 12? What about Wake Forest?
I'd rather have NC State, I think, but Wake Forest is a conversation for sure.
Yeah, I think
NC State's probably a little better in football.
What does Miami want? Because that is a dumpster fire. Doing business with Miami is very difficult.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. I love all of it. I think it is very interesting. It is very interesting, and I think the only one that's got overwhelming value here is North Carolina. I think that Florida State kind of the issue for Florida State, in my opinion, is that I'm trying to be measured. I think there is a lack of respect for their business acumen.
They're a pain in the ass.
They are a pain in the ass. And they're not great partners. And I think this is the other part of torpedoing the ACC. Do you want that in your conference? Again, a Super League fixes this. But we'll see. I don't know exactly where you go with that.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where you go with that. It's just a really interesting conversation. 99% of this is speculation. Brett Yormark, as we reported 3 months ago, has reached out and spoken to just about everybody in that conference, with few exceptions. And his conversations with Texas, and when Ross Dellinger is tweeting a basically not a retraction, a clarification of what he said. I mean, come on. And I don't know if we still have that tweet or not. We don't. But when Ross Dellinger went on John Kurtz's show, and everybody said, well, he said that Florida State and Clemson are going to the Big 12. He didn't say that. He never said that.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's what Jason Scheer is saying based on the tweet that you read.
No, Jason's not saying, and this is the thing, the verbiage in the tweet is not,
hey, Florida State and Clemson are in fact going to the Big 12. That's not what the tweet says.
Which others have said.
The tweet from Jason Shears says, hey, sources tell me they believe it is likely that within a year or so, this could happen. So using words like believe, likely, a year or so sounds a lot like potentially, maybe not. We'll see what happens type material, which is fine. I'm not even saying that Jason should be ripped for it. What I'm saying is that people, and I think someone commented this, people misconstrued what these guys are saying. They're saying, hey, I'm being told that it's potentially possible, not that it's actually going to happen, which is a huge difference.
And we still have to wait and see what happens with these lawsuits for NIL.
By the way, how much heartburn and egg are you going to have on your face when you've just poured all this money into litigation and then the Super League rolls out in a year or so, and you're this is all for naught. This is all just a fugazi. This isn't even real. This isn't.
I totally agree.
You know what I mean? Like, you're just going to burn all this money and then you're going to go ahead and jump into the Super League. And everyone's going to ride off into the sunset. You can be a pain in your ass on your own campus and nobody else has to care about it. I mean, that's what the Super League does. It fixes all that.
Yep, I agree. One other thing I think is very interesting is ESPN's on in the background. Nick Saban as an analyst is incredibly compelling to me. I care what he says.
Yeah.
I care what he says. Like, is Georgia the clear-cut team to beat in the SEC? I want to know what Nick Saban says about that. And they are. Carson Beck's going to be a stud.
Yeah.
But Nick Saban, he's still making, isn't he making $500,000 from Alabama?
I believe it's something like that. Yes.
And then millions from ESPN.
Still has an office there, still helping them, just not the head coach.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Kim Coulter, real quick, and then we have to get to the not fun portion of the program. NC State is Texas Tech when you look at their bowl history, basketball, etc. Would be great addition to the Big 12, in my opinion. Man, This is such a big year for Texas Tech.
Yeah, the problem is that I completely agree with you, Kim. The problem is that does the Big 12 need another Texas Tech level program? Because is Joey gonna, answer the bell? Is he gonna show up? Like, I want him to show up. I want Texas Tech to be good.
Don't you need Pitt in the Big 12?
You do. Yeah.
That Pitt, West Virginia, and Neil Brown needs fired.
It's so perfect for Big 12 country and Big 12 culture. It's perfect.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's incredibly important. Mike Smith says you had me at pew 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 pew. I probably shouldn't joke about that. All right. As usual, spent the weekend up at Canyons Golf in Park City. One of the worst first 5 holes I have ever had. It has been butt crack hot in Utah. So I did not swing my driver at all.
Yeah.
This week. Hit some irons. Saturday I had a really good iron session in my yard. I have a whole golf setup in my backyard. Yesterday went up to Canyons and shot an 85, which I was pretty happy with. I lost 4 golf balls total yesterday. I was pretty happy with that. The last 13, 12 holes, hit the driver pretty well. Hit the irons pretty well. Left a 9-iron about 5 yards short that wound up costing me. But that's what I love about Canyons Golf, is that no matter what your level is, you can play at Canyons. The greens are incredibly difficult, but they're challenging and they're fun. Canyons Golf in Park City, absolutely the golf experience you're looking for. And I love that yesterday we played in 65, 70 degree weather. It was overcast, so it was 95 in the valley. Got up to Canyons yesterday morning. Was beautiful. It was 60. It was 65 and cool. By the time we were done, it was about 80 degrees. Like, it was the perfect weather day to play golf up in the mountains, and it was awesome. Hit a bomb of a drive on 17. You just love those holes where the tee box is elevated and you can watch your ball off the... See, those of us that are obsessed with golf, all we're trying to do is draw our driver.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we're trying to learn to do. And I finally have gotten closer. I can do it about 3 out of every 5 drives now. I'm drawing the driver. The gondola hole, I drew my driver. I towed it a little bit. But it's just fun golf, right? That's the best part about canyons. The carts are amazing. The views are amazing. The wildlife is amazing. And the golf is top notch. And the best part is you're in a resort, a world-class resort at Park City Mountain Resort. Big concert stage set up. The Friday night concerts up at Park City Mountain Resort. World-class food and dining. Great service. It's an amazing golf experience. Get up to Park City Mountain and play golf at Canyons Golf. I love it. It is so enjoyable. Hook it up. Tell them you heard about it at on the Monty Show. You can book your tee times online, or you can call Canyons Golf to book. So, anything interesting happen over the weekend?
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, this is the part of the program where people are going to get pissed off.
Oh, this Trump assassination attempt. It's funny we brought up the Twitter thing earlier and the vitriol that is on Twitter. And I just don't invest in it. But then you look at this thing where you have a guy take a shot at a former president. And what's the first thing that you are hearing from people? It's Joe Biden's fault. And I'm like, okay, we just went through a scenario where a former president damn near had his head blown off. And you want to talk about it's Joe Biden's fault. And in these critical moments, the thing that I don't understand, and if you've watched this show for any modicum of time, you know that we ask this question pretty much every other day. What is it going to take to get us back to being Americans instead of left or right or Democrat or Republican? And in this moment where we were mere millimeters away from one of the most tragic incidents in the history of this country, the first thing you want to do is point the finger at Joe Biden. And I think we learned a lot about our country through this situation. This was a 20-something-year-old wingnut, belonged to a gun club. It was his father's AR-15. He was a very quiet guy. Of course, the neighbors were shocked. The schoolmates were shocked. We get it. He worked as a food industry professional. He belonged to a private gun club where he was a regular. And yes, are there questions about the Secret Service? We're going to talk about that in a minute. This is not he's that left-wing liberal. That's not what this is. If you're going to crawl your ass up on a roof and try and shoot a former president, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
You are not Republican or Democrat. You are not conservative or liberal. You are deranged. There's something wrong with you. And when that happened, and he misses the president by millimeters and ruins a family's life and shoots 2 more people, and the first thing you want to do is point your finger at Joe Biden, you have a problem. You need help. What happened in that moment was an attack on freedom. Have you thought about that? Let me get this right. You were whatever state of mind you are in, you disliked this person so much that you tried to kill them while they were giving a speech during a political campaign for president, where you not only missed to the point where yesterday, what was Donald Trump doing? Was he laying in a hospital bed recovering? No, he was golfing yesterday at Bedminster. So not only did you miss, but you murdered somebody that was expressing their free right to political free speech. They're granted right in the Constitution and the grant of rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. They're federally protected rights. So let's see, you tried to murder a political candidate, then you murdered somebody expressing their constitutional right, and you shot 2 more people doing the same. And that's Joe Biden's fault? This was an attack on democracy, again, for the second time in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
This was an attack on our political process. And you're pointing at Joe Biden. We have a problem in this country. We don't like each other. We don't talk to each other. And if you disagree with me, I'm going to pull out an AR-15 and I'm going to try and kill you. There's something wrong with that. That's not who we are. Only it is who we are now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I don't like you, now if I disagree with you, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to listen to your viewpoint. I am going to choose violence. And then I'm going to point at my opponent and blame them. It's crazy to me. And if I don't do that, I'm going to say it was fake and staged. The first thing your thought process is this was staged? This was a fake assassination attempt? Fuck out of here. Like, it is so incredibly disappointing to me that I can't wrap my head around the fact that somebody takes a shot at a former president. And I'm purposefully not saying a shot at Donald Trump because I don't give a rat's ass what your opinion of him is. He's a former president. And Fox News and CNN are going in 2 completely different directions with it. How is that possible?
Because I think everything in our country now has an agenda. Everything, whether it's candidates, which it makes sense. Hey, you're a political candidate, you're going to have an agenda. That makes sense. But like news networks or any type of media or social media, or I'm a firm believer that social media is why we don't like each other. I think that the dynamic that we all remember at recess on the schoolyard doesn't take place anymore because we're not in person anymore. So we can just talk a bunch of junk and nothing's going to happen. And so then what happens is we talk all that junk. We're a tough guy. And then we think, oh, well, I think this about a political candidate, so I dislike that person so much, I'm going to go and do this. And I'm going to also die in the process.
And now MSNBC is reporting, just this morning, MSNBC is reporting that this guy, while driving to the Trump rally on Saturday, stopped and bought 50 high-powered rounds of ammunition to shoot at Donald Trump. So there's all kinds of conversations here. Yes, I'm talking about your AR-15. It's completely unnecessary, and I think they shouldn't be on the street. I'm not telling you we should take them away. I think we should stop selling them. At what point do we understand nobody's using, because it's my right, nobody's using them to protect your rights. They're using them to take people's rights away. At what point do we wrap our heads around that? At what point do we wrap our heads around the fact that bullying is a problem in this country?
Mm-hmm.
This guy's high school classmates, I believe 2 or 3 of them said he was bullied. And I read that last night and I was like, who's really surprised by that? Then you have all these other people who are like, he was a nothing. He was a zero. He wasn't on my radar. He was very quiet. And
right. Those are the ones.
And then they're like, well, in 2021, 4 fucking years ago, he made a $15 donation to a Democratic organization. Oh, well. But then you say, well, he's a registered Republican. No, he's not. Yeah, he was. And you know what? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Who cares if he's a registered Republican? Who cares if he gave $15 to a Democratic party or organization? You guys, we have a problem. We have a problem where we don't love each other. We don't like each other. We're mean to each other. And the Christian right in this country that's like, My wife said something very smart yesterday. Well, the Christian right is going to say that Donald Trump isn't dead because God protected him. What about the guy who is dead? God forgot about him? We're not. This isn't a religious conversation. This is a conversation about exactly what Joe Biden said. Oh, there he is. He's a liberal. Fuck this guy. Tell me he's wrong. We need to turn the fucking temperature down.
Yeah.
Now, Joe Biden can't speak and put sentences together, but you know what he did say? We need to turn the temperature down. We need to stop attacking each other. And I saw on I was watching some news before I went to bed to kind of gather stories for today. And what do I see on my TV? Alex Jones talking about how this is now a civil war. What are we doing?
Nothing good. And I just,
what are we doing?
The problem is I don't know how the sentiment changes. I don't know. Like, again, it's not about whether you like or don't like Donald Trump. It's not about that. What it's about is I don't know how we move on from where we are now. I don't know if it because social media obviously isn't just getting erased, right? Like we can't, unwind the watch. So we're always going to have social media, but it's like it's almost as if it's going to take like a movement by most of the country to say, yeah, like we're going to change this. We're going to start to try to intentionally be nicer to people and like try to be more genuine with what we're looking for. It's like I said earlier in the show, it's so easy to hate. And I feel like that's all anyone does. Like, oh, like F this guy, F that guy. It's Biden's fault. It's Trump's fault. It's your fault. It's my mom's fault. Like, dude, like at some point it stops being everybody else's fault and it starts being our own fault. And at some point we got to stop feeding into the hate. Cause that's the other thing. Like, when we talk about stuff like Twitter or whatever, you notice it's a small majority of people that are heard the most. That's the problem. That's my biggest concern, frankly, in this election when we talk about voting and what's going to happen. There is hundreds of millions of people that you're never going to hear from that they may be registered Dem or Republican or whatever. Doesn't even matter. They're going to vote a certain way.
I agree.
And those are the people that are going to decide the future of the country. So now we've moved on from, just to put this in perspective, we moved on from the debate over the weekend. We're now talking about this.
Well, what's also interesting, and that's a really good point, because what are we not talking about? That Joe Biden's not competent.
Yeah.
Now, that's still happening behind the scenes. There's no question about that. And that conversation will return. But I thought it was very interesting that what the Biden conversations were, well, he has this quote about putting Trump in the crosshairs. And it's Biden's fault that Trump got shot. Do you want to go chapter and verse for the things that Donald Trump and his team have said? Do you want to go back to January 6th? Do you want to? And the other part of this that I thought was so interesting was, oh, it only happens to Donald Trump and conservatives. Somebody forgot to tell Nancy Pelosi's husband that. Somebody forgot to tell Gabby Giffords that. Somebody forgot to tell the January 6th mob who was going after Nancy Pelosi and who was openly, walking around with a noose looking for a place to hang Nancy Pelosi. So let's get one thing straight. Nobody's innocent here. And the truth is we've got to tamp that down. We can't be talking about murdering politicians we don't like. And the other part of this is this whole immunity thing that was brought up yesterday about how Joe Biden did this because now he knows Joe Biden didn't do this. Joe Biden didn't do this. A deranged 22-year-old American did this.
With access to an assault rifle.
And again, what was the first thing we heard? Well, this guy's going to be an illegal. No, he's not. He's an American. And the gun that he used to take a shot at a former president and murder another American was legally obtained by his father. And this guy not only used a legally obtained weapon, he has really good training because he belongs to what is described as the premier gun club in the state down the street from his house. So This cat used a gun that was illegal, that was legally obtained, ammunition that MSNBC is reporting he bought on the way to the rally, and illegally educated himself in one of the premier firearms academies in the state. You don't think that's a problem? Nobody knew this cat was deranged? Nobody knew that this kid was, come on. His father's well-to-do. His family's well-to-do.
And what's so surprising, like when you think about this guy's story, is the process by which people come to these conclusions. Like, and it's obviously very difficult to understand, right? I mean, we're trying to sit here and rationalize the irrational, of course. So it's going to be really difficult to understand. But just thinking about like the point you're making. Hey, on the way he bought ammunition. So this kid, I'm sure, had been planning this for probably 2 weeks or so. I don't think this is something that he was like, oh, I'm a year out and I'm going to plan on. Like, it's not that sophisticated. You're giving him too much credit at that point. It's a situation where I'm speculating, but I'm going to guess the debate happened. Everything with Joe Biden that's happened, then happened. And this guy goes, yeah, I'm a registered Republican, but for whatever reason, I think that Trump is whatever he is, right? I think that we have to take Trump out. We like this lunacy. And then is like, all right, cool. Gonna go into the gun storage locker that my dad has. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna do this, and I'll be on my way. Can't tell me he talked to his dad about it. Can't tell me that there was that's not how it works.
And before we get to that rooftop, there's also this narrative that, well, he asked for more Secret Service protection and they wouldn't give it to him. They gave it to him. And 3 weeks leading up to the rally, more staff and more resources were allocated to protecting candidate Trump. So the narrative that was put out by his son the other day about how the Secret Service refused to protect Donald Trump, they clearly now have shown they beefed up his detail and they beefed up his assets.
Yeah.
So then there is that rooftop. And somebody is going to have to answer for this. I would love to understand. How was that rooftop unsecure? It's 158 yards from where Trump was standing to that rooftop. Not only did they know he was on that rooftop, not only were they aware that there was a threat in place, and if this scenario proves true, and I will not believe it until the FBI releases this report, because I just think being a cop in this country is so incredibly difficult. There is a story out there that a police officer climbed the ladder to that roof, saw this guy on this roof, whose name we're not going to say, but saw this guy on this roof. The guy wheeled around and was either going to shoot or was going to point his gun at the cop who jumped off the roof. The guy knew he was in trouble. That's when he turned and fired a shot, which is what enacted the counterterrorism sniper, the counter sniper on the rooftop stand that was elevated above Donald Trump. And I don't know how many of you, I'm hoping you saw that. There is a barn behind Donald Trump and two counter snipers are on that roof. They're fixated on the guy that eventually wound up shooting at Donald Trump. But there was some chaos. They could not get clearance to shoot. And so that's what's being investigated. Were they delayed in shooting? Were they fixated on that target? Did they not shoot because the cop was on the roof? Because once they did shoot, my man was dead.
Yeah.
It was over. And then what law enforcement sources told CNN last night was that the burst of three, because there were three different shots. The first shot was the shooter shooting at the president. The second shot was the counterterrorism group shooting back at the shooter, neutralizing the threat. The third shot was he moved again. He twitched on the rooftop, so they shot him again. And now, and I think say what you want about Joe Biden. I thought he nailed that speech last night. Now, the part where he couldn't speak clearly, well, the guy's fucking old.
Yeah, stop being surprised.
But what he said was, we're going to do an independent review of this. And immediately everybody got on board with that, because we need to know how that rooftop was not secure.
Yeah.
We need to know, what did the local police do? Because several rally goers were waving their arms and pointing at the rooftop, because this was a very clear line of sight. And my biggest question is, you all knew he was up there. Everybody knew he was up there. How was he allowed to take a shot? I need to understand that process. And I don't know that we do, because if you're a counter sniper, you have a clear line of sight and crystal clear view of him. It was not a secret he had guns. It was a gun. You would have been very, from that perch, they're looking like they're elevated. If you go look at the pictures of the counter snipers, they're highly elevated, looking down on that rooftop, because a lot of people said, well, the roof the guy was laying on was pitched. They're up at an angle where they can see down to the other side of that roof. So I am interested to see what the independent review says about why those counter snipers did not shoot before he shot.
Yeah,
and
I'm
I'm
guessing that's exactly what you're saying. They clear. I mean, you can't tell me a counter sniper is sitting there like, hey, this dude's got a gun. He's got a clear line of sight at the former president. We should probably shoot this guy, but we're not going to, because I'm going to guess you weren't allowed to.
I would guess. I mean,
like, again, I'm not going to sit here and do the Alex Jones tinfoil hat. Oh, well, Joe Biden told him not to shoot. That's just ridiculous. The guy, those dudes are professionals. They are trained to protect, and they are also very clear on their rules of engagement. They're very clear on, hey, what's the situation? What's the scenario? If you think that these guys aren't prepared for anything, you have no idea what you're talking about. They're very much prepared for the moment. They know what they need to do. And I'm telling you, it was a matter of, hey, they were not able or, allowed to shoot him until he shot.
I need to know, because listen, what if this guy had been a better shot? And I think it's important to note, I didn't even know this was a thing. He was cut from his JV rifle team in high school. And they're saying he was a terrible shot. And yet he spent time at this gun club. So what if he was he missed by millimeters, man. We are millimeters away from one of the worst moments in the history of America.
Can you imagine that imagery?
Oh, no. Can you imagine the devastation to our political system, to our way of life? Can you imagine not only the devastation for that family, the devastation for America? A presidential candidate was murdered because you disagreed, which is all you can surmise.
Yeah.
You disagreed with his views, so he was murdered. Man, that's tough to handle.
Yeah.
And
it's obviously unacceptable.
And we use all this bullshit hyperbole about, well, democracy's in danger. Do tell. Because if he'd have hit that guy, if that shooter had hit Trump, democracy would have been more than in danger. More than it was on January 6th. More than it was at Paul Pelosi's house. More than it was at Gabby Gifford's rally at that supermarket parking lot. So we're very lucky that Donald Trump is not dead.
Yeah.
It's wild to me. It is wild to me. And the idea that we are criticizing Secret Service agents, specifically women, because, well, that's what we do in this country. We vilify and victimize women constantly. The fact that we are criticizing Secret Service agents for not being able to holster their weapon after Donald Trump got back into his SUV is absolutely ridiculous. How you watch that tape and criticize the Secret Service, it is beyond me.
Yeah.
They quite literally put their bodies between the shooter and the president to protect him. And you have the balls to criticize them because in the most frantic moment of their entire human existence, that gal couldn't find her holster. What about the guy who ran up behind Trump first and couldn't find his holster? How come nobody's talking about him? Oh, that's right, because he's got a dick and she doesn't.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous to me. What those people did is heroic. Are there process problems? Certainly. How is that building not in the perimeter? That building is not in the security perimeter. How is that building not in the perimeter?
150 yards just is not far. Like it's not. That's just not like. That's not like half a mile. It's not like.
I would love to understand. How this 20-year-old got up on a roof at 158 yards with an AR-15 and a clear line of sight to a former president and a current presidential candidate. Somebody's got to be accountable for that. And I don't know if that is there's a lot of people saying that building was the responsibility of the local police. Well, a former president and candidate is there. I'm going to say the Secret Service has some questions to answer.
Yeah, I mean, on the day of, it may have been their responsibility, but it shouldn't have been their responsibility. I mean, you can't have a situation play out where you've got snipers who have vision to that building, but it's not in the security perimeter. That just is not going to be good enough.
Yeah, Secret Service is going to have to answer some questions here because it's remarkable to me that guy was on that building. I cannot believe it. I can't. Bro, it's 2024 and we're taking shots at a former president and a current candidate. Are we, what world are we living in?
And I agree. We need confirmation of what went down on that roof. We need to know if it is in fact true that a cop did find him and was up on that roof and then jumped off the roof or what. Like, again, I'm not saying that I would have the cojones to do it, but if you're on that roof as a cop, you got to take a bullet. You got to take a bullet or leave a bullet. Yeah, I mean that's your job, man. And I hate saying that, but it's true. Like if you're right there, so you're climbing up the ladder, you're on the roof. The guy flips around. I mean, you got to get after him.
We need to know the details of that situation, and if in fact that scenario is true, we need to know that because I cannot believe that you have rally goers who couldn't get inside the venue. It was, I think there were 12,400 people maximum capacity, according to the county prosecutor. You had 12,400 people inside the venue and their estimates are 5,000 more outside, listening to the rally in this field where this building is. And they watched this odd dude walk up to the building, climb the ladder, and they're waving at the local authorities saying, hey, because there were no Secret Service. There was this story being floated that there was Secret Service everywhere outside the venue. There was not. You had law enforcement outside the venue, which is how this story is being told, that this cop climbed the ladder when the guy whipped around with an AR, jumped down. If that's in fact true, you got to take that guy's badge. You cannot do that. And I think it is going to be very interesting to see exactly what the radio traffic was, because all that radio traffic is recorded. So they are already digesting that. They intentionally have a wide angle view of the entire area so that they can isolate video. It's not going to be a secret what happened on that rooftop. It's not going to be a secret what communication was given and what traffic took place. Did the Secret Service do its job? Did the local police do their job? Who dropped the ball? Because I think the Secret Service is going to take a significant amount of heat here. Even though it is important to say the Secret Service that was immediately in the vicinity executed perfectly.
Yep.
They covered him. They assessed him while he was on the ground being covered. They did, the cat teams did an incredible. I've actually seen that. One of the scariest things I've ever seen was Barack Obama come to San Francisco when I was working in San Francisco. And the amount of people that are in that security detail and the absolute intimidation factor they deploy is striking. And to see that amount of people, but it's what the Secret Service has always talked about. The people closest to the president have almost no ability to protect him. Because when you have a guy in a roof shot at 158 yards with an AR-15, nobody's stopping that bullet.
Well, and I think it begs the question, too. I mean, Joe Biden now, are you not beefing up security? Are you not like in full, like, hey, we're anytime he's visible, we got to be like A1. We got to be as locked down as we can be, because that there's higher potential now that this has taken place over the weekend for a response. And I know that sucks, but it's true.
Yeah, and I look at Jimmy's comment. Trump supporters said it was noticeable how different a previous rally from 2020 had much more rooftop support from the Secret Service than they did this time, because the rallies are small. And this is something that Trump fans don't want to talk about. His rallies are smaller. And Donald Trump, I think, had done a very good job. He is well aware, in his campaign, his advisors, people have openly talked about this, that he gets multiple threats and multiple incidents per week. Like, he is somebody that takes a lot of flack, literally and figuratively. And which is, one, I think there is a smaller appetite for those rallies. And two, I think he is acutely aware that the threat level is higher. And so those rallies are more contained, which again, I ask, and I know that this is incredibly not popular. I ask his organizers and his advisors, what the fuck were you thinking having this rally in that setting? What were you thinking? Because the truth here is, and Donald Trump and his sons talked about this yesterday, he doesn't listen to the Secret Service. The Secret Service, in his position, protecting Donald Trump, they are taking orders from him and his team. There is, because you cannot tell me there is a body guy who would be like, yeah, this is fine. There's a rooftop 158 yards right there that's unprotected. No Secret Service guy is going to be like, yeah, that's fine. I don't buy that for a second. I do not buy that for a second. And what I think is really interesting is that you're still having the convention starting today. And I think Donald Trump was exactly right when he said, I'm not going to let this wingnut stop me from doing what I'm doing. Whether you like Donald Trump or not, that's the exact right way to go. And the Milwaukee was already pretty much shut down. You were going to have a hard time getting anywhere near that place. But it also, I think, is very interesting that he had explosives in his car, this guy that shot. He had explosives and the mechanism to deploy them in his car. So
I'm just telling you, man.
People will go to great lengths.
Yeah.
People will go to great lengths.
I'm telling you, when people are at this level of desperation to do something like this, the dying is hardly their concern. If you're willing to take a shot at a former president like that, dying is hardly your concern. You're assuming you're going to die. You're telling yourself, this is a sacrifice that I have to make, or whatever the hell story you're telling yourself. But the point is that I don't know. I agree with what everyone's saying. The Secret Service needs to be held accountable. Certainly local law enforcement needs to be held accountable. But ultimately, the feds need to learn a damn lesson that local enforcement is not trained to protect a president. They're trained to enforce local laws. Like, hey, you were speeding, or hey, you can't park there.
We've seen it multiple times. The Uvalde, Texas shooting.
Yeah, perfect example, dude. They're not equipped.
They're not going in.
Answer.
And it's not even an equipment issue. They're not mentally prepared to die on the job. And if you are a member of the Secret Service, you are trained specifically to die in the line of duty. That's your job. You are going to die so the president or the protectee doesn't. And what we've seen it at Uvalde, we've seen it in multiple places where local law enforcement is not trained and prepared for the worst case scenario. When all the Secret Service and these CAT teams and these special forces guys that retire out of special forces, do you think they go into the private sector? 9 out of 10 of them do not. They go into CAT teams. They go into the CAT team are the guys that are on the stage, the military looking dudes with their long barrels and their helmets. And those guys are former special operations guys. I'll take that guy over Jimmy the sheriff.
100%.
With all due respect to Jimmy the sheriff, he's not prepared to die in the line of duty.
Yeah.
Every one of those dudes is. And those women that you're so critical of who couldn't holster their weapon and they're incompetent, they're ready to die in the line of duty. They stood between the former president and a shooter yesterday or Saturday. So I'm not going to criticize them while wearing a sport coat, not being able to holster their weapon. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I am not doing that. It is, in my opinion, not wise to have Jimmy the sheriff trying to protect a political figure, because bad things will happen. And when you ask a guy who lives down the street to climb up a ladder and stop an active shooter, you're probably not going to see much success there. You're not.
Yeah, maybe there's a conversation around, what defines whether, the, what did you say, the counterterrorism snipers, are able to take a shot? Because that ultimately seems to be, again, where it's not been, vetted out yet, but that seems to be where the rubber met the road here.
Well, there was a guy on Fox yesterday talking about how they all have green lights. Those counter snipers all have green lights. Well, apparently they don't.
Yeah.
Apparently they don't.
Because I'm with you. They were perched. They had a clear view to him.
They were trained on him.
Like,
you can see the guy in the pictures, in the videos. He's got him scoped. He's locked on that shooter. And what happened when he actually pulled the trigger? When the counter sniper pulled the trigger, he left that guy in pieces. So my point is, I need to know what the communication was and why, because I think it's probably a stretch to say he always has a green light. Maybe they need to.
Yeah.
And you pull the trigger in any law enforcement situation. You pull your gun out, you need to be ready to kill somebody.
Yeah.
That is the edict. If I'm gonna pull out my weapon, I better be ready to kill somebody, because we don't shoot to wound.
Yeah.
In this country. So if dude up there is a counter sniper, he's highly trained. He is trained over and over and over. Thousands of times he's run this scenario. If he says it's time to pull, let him go. And if it was wrong, well, he's probably going to do prison time. That's the life you live in.
Yeah, I mean, you signed up for that responsibility. And maybe we need to stop calling them counter snipers. Maybe it just needs to be snipers. Like, come on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I love all the BS where people are like, it's fake. They hit the teleprompter. Me and my wife are sitting there watching the video of this on Saturday, much like all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, it was plastic that hit him in the face. The plastic wasn't hit. There was this theory it was a fake assassination to bring him more attention and help him win the election. And I'm just asking, if you're a voter, and let's say you're undecided, you're an independent, you're undecided, somebody tries to kill former President Trump, you're like, oh, well, they tried to kill him, I think I'm going to vote for him. I don't think that's likely.
No.
I don't think that this assassination attempt, is it going to change people's votes? Not en masse. I don't see that. I don't see that. And it's just one of those things where it'll be very interesting to see, because having covered crime for a part of my career, these things are usually very, I would bet they already know what happened.
Yeah.
Like to the T. Okay, the cop went up the ladder. Yeah, he wasn't ready. That sniper on the roof, the moment it was happening, knew why he didn't pull the trigger. Because I guarantee you that sniper's looking through a scope where he can see the guy's got an AR-15 pointed at the former president of the United States. Why in the world did you not pull that trigger? Well, because somebody was in his ear. Somebody was in his ear,
which
telling him something, which they already know what was said. Because trust me when I tell you, if you're that sniper on that rooftop, he knows what was being said in his ear, and he knows exactly why he didn't pull the trigger. He also knows that he was on tape. His audio was on tape. Their audio was on tape. There's no lying about why you didn't pull the trigger. So did the guy freeze? No, I'm going to say he didn't freeze.
No, that's highly doubtful.
He didn't pull the trigger because my guess is he was told not to.
Yeah, they operate in reason.
Yeah.
You either have a reason to shoot the guy or you have a reason why you didn't shoot the guy.
Yeah. Kim Coulter, it's always fascinating to me to learn the side certain people take in this chat. It's wild.
Yeah.
I guarantee you right now there's people, and I guess I could go and look. Well, dude, stick to sports, bro. Why aren't we talking about sports? Well, there's other choices.
We have fine, Mom.
Yeah, there's other choices for you today then. There's other choices.
Yeah.
Here we go. Breaking news. Florida judge. Who cares? Jacob DeLambo. Dude, the news calls for his death too. People think he is the new silly little mustache man. What are you talking about? Like number 77. Yes, please hit the like button. Appreciate you watching the show today. Capazzo in the law enforcement community. Jake, I agree with you. The local law enforcement shouldn't be doing the Fed's job.
And that's the part that bothers me. I feel like, and it's not every case. Let's not use a broad brush. We're talking about this case. In this case, that building should have been in the perimeter. It should have been in the Secret Service's perimeter. And
it's wild.
That's the part I have trouble with. Because again, at one point early on, before anyone knew what happened, like the immediate reaction was, oh, well, this dude was 150 feet away, which I was like, first of all, I have a real hard time believing dude's got an AR 150 feet away, number one. But then when we find out what it looks like, I'm like, bro, like this is like adjacent to the, like, what are we doing?
It's embarrassingly bad.
Yeah.
If the Secret Service blew that. Which is why,
and I don't
they're
think it's
so
harsh
good
to
at what
say
they
that.
did.
I don't even think that's harsh. I think that's real.
The Secret Service is very good at what they do. So it will be shocking to me if they just were like, nah, fuck it. We're not going to cover that building. Come on. I don't buy that. Already read that one. Capazzo also says, I was always prepared. It's part of the job. And if you get used to that, then law enforcement is not the job for you. I would agree with that. Red Wine 65. They failed pretty bad. The guy wasn't shooting paper from that roof. Well, that's what we need to know. Hey, there it is. There it is. Penny the Woo. Stick to sports, Monty. This is not your realm.
Way to be reliable, bro.
I'll stick to sports.
Yeah.
Monty talks about non-sports issues at the end of every show. This is definitely something that should be discussed. Good job, Monty.
Yeah, we're not just skipping this, dude.
Are you out of your mind?
Come on.
Like, this is what everybody's talking about today, which is what we talk about on this show. I'm sorry, Penny the Woo, that you don't agree with us. But it is what it is. Appreciate you guys watching the show. As always, your comments are always appreciated here. Please hit the like button. We always try to get to 100 likes on the show. We are at 82 likes today. So if you haven't already, please hit the like button. We appreciate that. Thanks to everybody who watched the show. Thank you for commenting. One of the biggest comment days of the year so far today. Appreciate that. The Monty Show is always presented by The Advocates, theadvocates.com. The best injury attorneys in the business. Full reaction tomorrow morning from SEC Media Day. Did you guys hear that Nick Saban already got declined entry into SEC Media Day because he forgot his credential in his hotel room? Nick, come on, buddy.
Come on, bro.
Until tomorrow, say goodbye, Jake.
Goodbye, Jake.